Good morning, everybody. If you're anything like me, you may have listened to Keir Starmer's speech yesterday about what's happened this week, and you are probably utterly disgusted by what he said because the main thrust of it was to smear people who are concerned about the safety of children in this country as far right. But there's nothing about any of the actual other things that have been happening in this country. He talks about keeping the country safe from the far right. What about keeping the country safe from knife murderers, such as the knife murderer in Southport, or machete gangs, such as we saw in Southend-on-Sea, or other riots that have happened in this country by migrant communities in Leeds, by the Bangladeshi riots in London, in response to something that happened in Bangladesh that's got absolutely nothing to do with this country, and the soldier in Kent who was stabbed multiple times, the grooming gangs, which continue to plague our country but are not dealt with because of political correctness. And sometimes they are, sometimes people do occasionally get a conviction. I believe this month there were some people who were convicted of utterly horrible sexual offences against white girls in this country by ethnic groups. We know what is happening in the with the grooming gangs there. But all Keir Starmer seemed to say was he's going to deal with the far right. Well, actually, let's talk about what happened here, because I know what is going on. Obviously I've been on the freedom rallies in the lockdown period, and I've seen dozens of freedom rallies. I was at every single one from 2020 to the summer of 2022 over a 2-year period, because I was standing up with everybody else who was against the lockdowns and against coerced injections and so on. So I've got very familiar with the police tactics and what they did, and the brutality and the tyranny of the riot police, the TSG in particular, but other police forces did the same. And I could see exactly the same police tactics on display in London on Wednesday. Now, I wasn't there because I didn't actually know that there was anything going to be happening in London on Wednesday as a protest against, obviously it's a protest against the murder of children. And this is only happening because of successive governments allowing rapid mass immigration into the country and not checking who's coming in. So we're getting all kinds of terrorists, murderers, rapists and criminals coming into the country. And nothing has been done to keep the ordinary British people safe from these kind of people who are coming into this country and acting with impunity. But on Wednesday afternoon and evening in London, there was a small rally of people who went to Parliament Square and then Downing Street to protest against this. Now, if the police had not turned up in huge numbers and agitated and harassed the crowds, there wouldn't have been any trouble. There would have been no trouble whatsoever, because they wouldn't have had any target to rail against. But they did. And you could see them from the very beginning on the videos I've watched. I've watched a lot of things, and I've been thinking about this and observing what's been going on. They, first of all, formed up a police line and then moved forward, pushing people forward, moving again, pushing people, arresting the odd person, snatching the odd person out of the crowd, bundling them to the ground, and then bundling them into police vans to take them away. And then as the time went on, they started kettling everybody who was there outside Downing Street. Now, the thing is, Downing Street is a side road off of Whitehall, and Whitehall is a narrow channel. And you can easily get stuck in there, and you can easily get kettled in there by the police. And I just wonder if this was a setup, because what I'm hearing is that there were organisers and they organised the day. I don't know where they publicised it because I didn't see it, but on Telegram channels and so on. So a few hundred people at least turned up. And the organisers there, they spouted off on camera, and then they all went home. And they left the people there who had come, but the organisers all went away, as far as I know. And it's sad to say that the people who went there listened to the organisers' speeches and then were left after an hour or two, became the patsies for the photographs and the videos that the mainstream media wanted to take in order to set up the narrative that there are far-right thugs in the country and that there's massive disorder. When there was one incident of some people in the crowd getting agitated with the police and starting to throw bottles and so on at the police, I could see clearly in there that there were some people who were paid agitators. They're state agents, our agents provocateurs. And I can see that because I've been on dozens of freedom rallies and I've seen exactly the same thing happen there. That there are people who are not of us. They are agents provocateurs and they start trouble. They either throw things over the fence in Downing Street or they start throwing bottles at the police and they get everybody else riled up. And then it escalates. And then the mainstream media, of course, are right there, 4 or 5 feet behind or to the side taking pictures. And how is it that there's always an ultra high quality, very, very expensive camera set up, or multiple camera setups? You can see the very, very expensive equipment of the journalists and reporters who are going to take the clips of this and stick it on the mainstream media. But they're always there, just right where the trouble is, just right where the trouble starts. And so then they get their narrative immediately. It's in all the papers the next day. It's on the television news in the evening. Oh, look, far-right thugs. But they're not far-right thugs. They're generally hundreds or so of decent people who went there because we want our country to be safe from Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson and Theresa May and David Cameron and Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and all of these people who have let and are letting in migrants to the country who don't care about this country and often attack British people. And we're not kept safe. And then we're told, oh, if you don't like this, you're racist or you're far right. And then you've got the agents provocateurs, the police agitating the crowds, kettling the crowds, the mainstream media there taking the pictures. That sets up the narrative. And you've got decent people who've gone because they're concerned and they've been used, sadly. I think looking at it, I just wonder if that's what actually happened and this was all a setup. The people who went, who saw this event on Telegram groups didn't realise this, but it was. And from my experience in the freedom rallies, going to a rally or a march or a protest on a Wednesday afternoon with a few hundred people there, you're going to get hammered. It's just the way it is because you're not going to get enough people to go out and protest and to be able to resist whatever police agitation is coming at you on a Wednesday afternoon, particularly not in Whitehall. If you're on Parliament Square, it's a different matter because that's a big open space. If you're in Trafalgar Square, it's a different matter as well because that's a big open space. It's not the public highway. So, you can gather there. It's all fine and legal. It's better on a Saturday. And if you gather in Hyde Park in Speaker's Corner, then, anyone can go on Hyde Park. It's not like you're on Whitehall, you're blocking the traffic. So they can say, well, okay, you're blocking the public highway and they can go in and hammer you. But if you gather in Speaker's Corner or Hyde Park Corner, anyone is allowed to gather there. There's no restrictions at all on who can go to Hyde Park. So you go to Hyde Park on a Saturday morning or Saturday lunchtime. You can have hundreds of thousands of people there gather, and then you can just march and rally and speak out against what is going on. And when I was at the freedom rallies, when there were 200,000 plus people there, as there were after March 2021, after it took a year to get that number. I was built up to that, but I remember the Freedom Rally in March 2021. The police started trying to arrest people doing their normal things, snatching people here and there, wrestling to the ground, bundling random people into the police vans. But all of a sudden, there were 100,000 people there. Then there were 200,000 people there, and it was too much. And then they changed. They had to change, and they had to just escort the march wherever it went. That's just what happened. They can't do anything if there's hundreds of thousands of people gathering in Hyde Park as opposed to a few hundred people gathering in Whitehall outside Downing Street on a Wednesday. So that got the government, the police, the mainstream media, their narrative. But they don't care about stopping Black Lives Matter riots or gypsy riots in Leeds, or they're not saying anything about keeping the country safe from knife murderers. They're just focusing on creating this bogeyman of the far right, which doesn't really exist. Doesn't exist. People are concerned and angry about safety in this country, and we don't want any more people raped or killed. That's all it is. And the disgusting response from Keir Starmer is to say, well, we're going to clamp down on these people. After, the ones who there were a few people causing trouble, but what I think is that most of them were paid agitators, agents provocateurs. What he said was he's going to set up national capability across forces. The thing is, what he said in his speech, although it sounds like he's talking tough, it really isn't anything, because there's already national capability. The police forces already share data with each other. And then he says, they're going to have shared intelligence. Well, there's already shared intelligence. This is nothing new. They're going to take preventative action. Well, they already do this. I mean, you think that all of a sudden the police are going to try to prevent things from happening, when they haven't done that before. They already have. From being on the London Assembly, as I was for 5 years, obviously that was dominated by Labour. You've got Sadiq Khan, a Labour mayor, who's in charge of the Metropolitan Police. And they were obsessed by the far right and hate crime. Well, these things are nonsense. But they don't go out and make a big song and dance about catching grooming gangs in London. I asked the mayor of London when I was there, what are you going to do to deal with grooming gangs? And he turned around to me and said, are you asking me that because of my religion and because of my ethnicity? I said, no, it's because you're the police and crime commissioner and you need to bloody sort it out. Excuse my language. I'm getting a bit angry myself at what's going on. I have to calm myself down. Back to Keir Starmer. I mean, what he said also is he's going to have more wide use of criminal behaviour orders to stop people from travelling and getting on trains and being able to go out. Well, the thing is, the criminal behaviour orders already exist. They came in under the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014. They replaced ASBOs, and the prosecution can ask a judge to impose a criminal behaviour order on someone if they are in a court and if they've been convicted of a crime. But it's not something the police can just go out willy-nilly and give them criminal behaviour orders to certain people. That has to go through the proper due process. You have to have proper due process in this country. So he's just bluffing here with saying he's going to have criminal behaviour orders. And then he also said, and this is the more disturbing thing, that Keir Starmer said that there's going to be wider deployment of facial recognition technology. Now, this should not be used widely at all. It shouldn't be used because there's no actual permission for the police to use it. They just do. This technology has been invented, and then there's really they can use it with impunity because there's nothing to say they can or they can't use it. But really, we should not be living in a surveillance police state. But this is where they're going. Obviously, the technology is here, and unless you have a government that is going to introduce regulations on the police to say that you are prohibited from using facial recognition technology because it is an invasion of privacy and it is undermines people's fundamental freedoms to go about their business without being surveilled all the time, then the police are just going to use it more and more. So the thing is, it doesn't matter which part of the uniparty is in charge, whether it's Tory or Labour or Lib Dem, whatever, or the Greens, heaven help us that they get in. I don't think they ever will because they're nuts, but doesn't matter. The uniparty is all for facial recognition technology, and as the technology increases, they will use it. But we need someone to actually regulate this and say to the police, you're only allowed to use it in certain conditions. You can only employ facial recognition technology in certain areas at certain times if you go to a judge, if you go to the court and get permission to do it. We should not be continually surveilled as private citizens. The government should be surveilled. We should know everything that the government is doing because we, the people, elect the government and they are accountable to us, so that's how it should be. But we have an inversion going on in society where the government wants to do all it does in secret and wants to essentially set itself above the people. This is the attitude that you get from people in the Uniparty, and particularly now, you see this even more from Keir Starmer and his Labour regime, which has come in the UK. They want to surveil everything that we're doing, even down to our financial transactions. They want to bring this in eventually as well. So we will have no privacy whatsoever, and they're just going to use this event, this horrible event this week, obviously in Southport, and the staged agitation which we had in London, particularly on Wednesday, and this rally outside Downing Street. They're going to use this to try and bring in more wider use of facial technology systems, and we need to stand up against this and say this is wrong. What would I do in this? Well, I've said one thing already. Don't go to rallies where you don't know who the organisers are and they bunk off after an hour and leave everybody else holding the kitten. That's actually not a proper metaphor, but to dump everybody else in the swamp, and they leave and they let everybody else be the patsies. This is not. You need to know when you're being manipulated. But if we're going to do rallies for our children's safety, which we need to do, we need to have them on Saturday, starting in Hyde Park, where there's no restrictions on people being there, and we need not hundreds of people, but hundreds of thousands of people, like every month or something, like the freedom rallies. This needs to be organised. The other thing is we need to get involved in politics again, and this is what I specifically am doing here. I've started the Heritage Party. I started in 2020 to be a socially conservative party, but then obviously we had the tyranny of the government and the police as acting as their agents to enforce their tyrannical anti-freedom rules for the next 2 years. And so we were at the front of the freedom movement from the very beginning. But obviously my focus is on trying to stand in elections to get power at local level, because in some cases local councils are in charge of what goes on in places, and if they allow a rally to happen, you can have a rally. If they don't, then they bring the police out and get heavy. We need our own people, proper patriots and citizens in our local councils, making the decisions and standing up for freedom. And we need people in Westminster. And the last election was a terrible result for the country because Labour got in. They got fewer votes than in 2019, but because so many people didn't vote, they got 411 seats. They've got a massive majority. But we need to get organised for next time. And, I'm here with the Heritage Party. We stood 41 candidates. We didn't have enough to stand all over the country. But what I would say is we've had the manifesto for freedom, for everything else that we need to restore our nation from the very beginning of the COVID period when no one else was there. You've got other people who've come in, and they've said things in the last couple of weeks before the elections. Okay, fine. But where were they in 2020? Where were they in 2021, 2022? Where are they now? They're nowhere to be seen. But the Heritage Party is. And, I'm so proud of everyone who stood as a candidate for us in the general election. Next time, I want to have 650 people standing in every seat in the country to be able to have a chance of forming a government. I know that is there's a lot of work to do, and you might say, "Oh, well, that's you're crazy." Well, no, I'm not. And if you don't stand up for freedom and to restore our nation, it's just going to go down the pan more and more. But please join us in the Heritage Party. Stand for your county council elections next May. Become a member, become a candidate, become active, and let's build something that is political. You've got the rallies. I know there was the rally last week. I wasn't there again in London. I couldn't make it, unfortunately, but people had a really great time at the Patriot rally with 100,000 people there, watching Tommy Robinson's film, and that was a very good film. Talking about corruption, I wasn't on the stage, but it was a good film. It was worth watching. But we need something that is beyond street campaigning. That's very, very important. But we need to get into power, and I'm here. And if you want to join me, please do. That's all I can say. An appeal to you to get actively involved in politics if you are concerned about all of these things. Mass immigration, we need it to end. We need it to be reversed, actually. And we need to deport anybody who is guilty of migrant crime. And we need to keep our streets safe. This needs to happen. It's not going to happen under the Uniparty. So heritageparty.org, please look us up and join us. Anyway, thank you so much. I've talked for a long time today because I've been trying to not get upset. I've been speaking about it because what's been happening this week has been awful. And the powers that be have just been twisting everything that is going on for their own agenda because they hate this country. They hate ordinary people. But they want to transform it by replacing immigration and all the other things. And I don't want to let that happen. And I'm sure you don't either. Anyway, sorry. Thank you for listening, everybody, if you made it to the end, if you're still with me. And God bless you all.